Jessica DuLong is a Brooklyn-based journalist, ghostwriter, book coach and the author of Saved at the Seawall, Stories from the September 11th Boat Lift and My River Chronicles, Rediscovering the Work that CNN. Tessa Miller was just 23 when her nightmare of deadly infections, procedures and misdiagnoses. Over the next several years, Miller tried dozens of medications, was hospitalized more times than she can remember and required 3 fecal transplants. She visited gastroenterologists, allergists, oncologists, pain medicine specialists, endocrinologists, gynecologists and neurologists. Her ultimate diagnosis of Crohn's disease finally explained the inflammation, ulceration, bleeding, fissures, abscesses, intestinal narrowing and all kinds of gnarly stuff throughout her digestive tract. Book author Tessa Miller shares her struggle adjusting to life with Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory disease of the digestive tract. But the diagnosis also meant that she had to come to terms with being chronically ill. Caught in what Miller wrote is that foggy space between the common cold and terminal. 6 in 10 adults in the United States suffer from chronic disease, and due to COVID-19, researchers expect that number. In What Doesn't Kill You? A Life with Chronic Illness, Lessons from a Body in Revolt, released February 2nd, Miller shares life lessons she absorbed while learning to grieve the self she'd once been and the future she might have had en route to accepting who. Read more. Tessa Miller's book What Doesn't Kill You? A Life with Chronic Illness, Lessons from a Body in Revolt was released February 2nd by Henry Holt. This conversation has been edited and condensed for clarity.CNN. You paint a vivid picture of the complex. What have you learned about loss that may be helpful to others? Tessa Miller. After my dad died in 2008 from liver failure due to long-term alcoholism, I felt what I considered I was unreachably sad and thought I would spend the rest of my life just spinning on my own little grief plan. When I was diagnosed with Crohn's, I was angry, just rage all the time. Feeling like no one else could understand what it was like for me compounded. I squashed and buried my rage, which led to massive anxiety and eventual panic attack. Today, whether we've lost a loved one or lost our own health to COVID-19, many of us are grieving a world that no longer exists or the loss of our work, our homes or any sense of routine. We're mourning a lot of things at the same time. It's time to throw the stages of grief. People often expect grief to be a singular emotion when it's really 5, 8 or 12 emotions. Sometimes take time to reflect on all those feelings and understand that CNN. In times of struggle, many of us cling to what you refer to as the illusion of. Why is it important to pierce that illusion with realism, even when the truth hurts? Miller. When I was first diagnosed with chronic illness, I experienced what Joan Didion calls magical thinking. I convinced myself that if I could search back through my whole life history to find what caused this, I could. But as a science writer, I knew that my disease stems from some combination of genetics and environment. There was nothing I could have done to prevent myself from getting Crohn's, but I still went looking for a cause, which led to a lot of self-blame. This is common among people newly diagnosed with a long. Oddly, that self-blame also reflects false hope. If I caused this, then I can. I got stuck in that phase for a long time. It left me both mentally and physically. I wasn't taking care of my body. Once I accepted that I was going to have this disease for the rest of my life, I started being able to manage it through proper care, like finding a team of doctors who I trusted and pursuing the right. Acceptance was a big step toward my starting to feel physically and mentally better. CNN, let's talk about the link between mental and physical symptoms. What has chronic illness taught you about mind-body interconnections? Miller. Over and over in conversations I've had with fellow chronically ill people, they've said they could understand their physical symptoms, but they couldn't come to terms with why they felt crushingly depressed, anxious all the time, or like they had PTSD. It's such a disservice to not talk to chronically ill people about the fact that they need mental health care. Both doctors and patients seem to dismiss the fact that your body, the very thing that's carrying you around in the world, has become unrecognizable, changed, Then there is the scientific reality that there is an intimate partnership between your body and your brain. Depression can worsen chronic illness. In addition to causing fatigue, brain fog and body aches and pains, it can make you not want to take your CNN. How does the U.S. healthcare system impact the care that people with chronic illnesses receive? Miller, as I wrote in What Doesn't Kill You? This book isn't about the healthcare system, but this book is entirely about the healthcare system because chronically ill people in America are at it. We know that certain categories of people suffer worse outcomes depending on socioeconomic group. If you're black or brown, a woman, fat, something like COVID illuminates all the cracks in the system. We have to consider who lives in historically redline neighborhoods, which still today report higher rates of asthma, and who, racially and by gender, makes up the population of essential workers. Black and brown people are dying from COVID at much higher rates than white people for no reason other than systemic racism, which is deeply entrenched in our medical system. When it comes to any illness, including chronic illness, consider who can go into a hospital and feel like they're going to be taken care of, rather than abandoned or treated poorly. CNN, you have learned a lot about advocating for yourself. What tips can you share? Miller, yes, I've learned a lot over the past 10 years, but I want to make it clear that it's easier for me because I have privilege. I'm white, thin, and my illness is mostly invisible. Advocating is a skill that can be. First, I recommend bringing an advocate, a trusted friend or family member who knows your health history and can communicate for you to the doctors if you're. Second, always come prepared with a list of notes and questions. For chronically ill people whose flare-ups can be unpredictable, it helps to carry a packet of health records with you. If you wind up at a hospital where you've never been before, these can clarify that you're not just in the ER seeking. If a healthcare provider is being negligent, dismissive, or isn't taking your concerns seriously, then demand that they write everything in your chart, including that they're not continuing care or not sending you for further. If they want, send an email to the office to create your own paper trail.CNN. As the pandemic continues, long COVID has become a chronic condition for more and more people. What advice do you have for those struggling with the uncertainty of this new diagnosis? Miller, before Crohn's was identified in the 1930s, people were disbelieved about their symptoms. They suffered and died because their illness was still a mystery. Long COVID is so new and the symptoms are so different from patient to patient. Some people have memory loss and brain fog or mysterious body pains and fatigue, while others have long-term heart or lung damage or even. The first thing to do is find your community. That will help you find other resources, including doctors who will. As with all healthcare, this can be more difficult if you're not in a city. But there is telehealth. Tell your community what you need, and people will help. I think about this Viktor Frankl quote all the time: survival is a community support can't remedy chronic illness, but it can make it easier.